Hey guys, welcome to this video. So in this video we're going to see how to monitor and handle the parallel operations in Oracle database. So here parallel operations means the SQL queries which are executing with parallel. Okay, so generally parallel uses CPU as the hardware resource. Okay, so always whenever we are using parallel we need to consider the CPU capacity in our Oracle database and also the operating system. Okay, so if you take a real-time example, you can take a bank. Okay, so there is one bank which has one cashier and there is another bank with 4 cashiers. Okay, so there is one manager for both the banks. Okay, so these managers are monitoring and seeing the performance of these cashiers, and the bank is giving salary to all these cashiers, right? So just imagine customers are staying in queue in one bank. Okay, so the line is very long in one bank, but the bank where there are only there are 4 parallel cashiers are there, multiple cashiers are there, 4 different queues are there, so the work is done very quickly. Okay, so all the people are getting their job done in very less time. Okay, so this saves time for the customers and customers are happy, and also it's not about the customers but it's also about the bank, right? So bank also needs to give salary to all these cashiers, and also they need to monitor and manage all these people in the bank, and separate workspace needs to be allocated, right? Lot of things are there, but the customers are happy. But here in this bank there is only one cashier. Okay, customers are not happy because the queue is very long, but the bank can easily manage that one cashier, right? So they only have to give salary to one cashier, so they don't need to manage, or they don't need to allocate separate workspaces, right? So you can compare the same example with the Oracle database. Okay, so when we need to use parallel, and also when we need to when we should not use parallel. So sometimes some people will say using parallel will be good. Okay, so sometimes people say using parallel will be bad. Okay, it's not always good and it's not always bad, it depends on the situation, right? So when the workload is very high, right? So if the volume of data that is going to be read from the database is very high, then obviously using parallel will be beneficial. But if the workload is very small, then using parallel will be completely negative. So here it is positive, but here the graph goes down when the workload is small, right? So you can take the same cashier example. So imagine that this particular bank, right? So here manager is managing all these cashiers. Only one customer is there for this bank. Okay, but this bank is having 4 cashiers and it has to pay money and it has to manage all these cashiers and a lot of things to manage, right? So for managing only for serving only one customer, there is no need of having 4 cashiers, unless until there is a need for multiple cashier. So if the customers who are coming to the bank, right? So if there are thousands of customers, we can take a simple example. There are 16 customers in this bank. So in this case it is fine, using 4 different cashiers will be fine. So 4 customers will be split into multiple queues, and their job will be faster. But if the same 16 customers come in this first bank, then obviously all the 16 people needs to stand in queue, and the process will be done one by one. So likewise, the workload also should be, the volume of data that is going to be processed also should be high when we use parallel, because in Oracle database allocating parallel server is very expensive. Okay, it's not very expensive, but it should be having some return on investment. Okay, so the benefit that you get when you use parallel should be greater than allocating the parallel server. That's when you need to use the parallel, right? Because Oracle needs to allocate the query coordinator. Okay, it needs to spawn multiple parallel processors. Okay, P0, P1, P2, likewise it goes on. So how many number of parallel servers that we allocate, up to Pn, it will be allocating number of slaves. So like how this manager, right? So this manager is managing all these caches. Likewise, this query coordinator manages all these parallel slaves. Okay, so its work is just to coordinate each and every parallel slaves and make sure that they are doing the job. So what these parallel slaves do, they will just scan the data from the disk. Okay, and all these all the data that are scanned, right? All the 4 parallel servers, which once all these servers complete the job, then everything will be merged and it will be given to the query coordinator. So these many number of processes are there, okay, for allocating parallel server. So that's the reason the benefit should be higher. So when the volume of data is high, then using parallel will be good. So this is how the parallel work, but this is more complicated than this. Okay, this is just a high level explanation that I am giving for your simple understanding. So these are all the parallel operations can be done. So both in partitioned and non-partitioned table. Okay, so but when it comes to insert, right? So inserting the data, if the table is partitioned, then only we'll be able to use parallel. We cannot use parallel for regular inserts, like insert into table values. So this for this statement we cannot use parallel. Okay, so always we need to understand for what kind of operations we can use parallel. Okay, otherwise even though we tell Oracle database to use parallel, we get confused, right? So whether Oracle is whether parallel operations can be used for this particular statement. So likewise, as I told you, the insert, right? So if we don't know that Oracle has this limitation, so this is not what you can say, this is not the drawback, but this is a limitation. Oracle itself is designed in such a way that it cannot use parallel for the regular conventional inserts. Insert into table values for those statements, Oracle cannot use parallel. So obviously we sometimes use parallel for these kind of statements, and we think why Oracle is not using parallel, right? So in those cases we should be aware whether for what kind of statements Oracle uses parallel. Otherwise we may not know that whether Oracle is really not using parallel, or we are not aware that whether parallel can be used for this statement. So it's up to the DBA's knowledge, so that there may be a gap for the knowledge, or sometimes actually parallel can be used but Oracle will not use it. So that is also one of the case. Say for example, for CTES Oracle can use parallel, but when I tell Oracle to use parallel, it may not use for multiple reasons. So there are a lot of scenarios like that. Okay, mainly it depends on CPU resource. So if the CPU resource is not available, then obviously Oracle will not use parallel. So at that time we need to understand why Oracle is not using parallel, whether any other processes are consuming all the resource, whether there is any limitation like the CPU limitation or the max limit for the parallel, right? Okay, so index creation, CTASK, create table as select, move, split, coalesce, partitions, then index, split, partitions, insert, update, delete, select. Okay, so all these operations we can use parallel. Also for DDL, these kind of tasks can be done with parallel. So the first step that we can do is to monitor the parallel from the operating system level. Okay, so there are so first we need to understand, right? So there are a lot of scenarios, as I already mentioned. So if the load is high on the server, right? So we need to check whether parallel is used or not. Okay, so here load means CPU. Okay, so whenever you are monitoring the databases, obviously you definitely would have got high load alerts from the OEM or any monitoring systems saying that the server has very high load for the last 5, 10, 15 minutes. So you will just check what happened really, right? So the first possible reason may be parallel. Okay, so there are a lot of other reasons, but using parallel will completely occupy all the CPUs. So if you see here, Aura P001, Aura P002. So this is the process convention. Okay, naming convention of parallel processes. So even I can show you how you can understand the parallel. So just say ps-ef grep Aura underscore P0 and grep. You don't need the grep process anymore, so just neglecting grep. Okay, so here if you see, there are already spawned parallel processes in the background in the operating system. So these are pre-reserved or these are allocated already. These are just waiting for the processes or the client to give some task. Okay, so these are pre-allocated processes, as I already mentioned. Okay, so there are 12 processes which are already ready to do their work. So once you are executing any queries, select queries or any select parallel queries or direct path queries, obviously parallel will be ready to take the task. Okay, so this is how you can identify the parallel PIDs. Okay, what are all the PIDs? So with these PIDs you can also go and check inside the database. So what are all the SIDs and what are all the SQL IDs and all these informations. Okay, so you can execute top command. So this is the most commonly used monitoring commands, right? So here you will be getting all the process information. Okay, so here currently we don't have any parallel information. So yeah, we see these parallel processes. Okay, so let me just execute a shell script to consume the parallel from the Oracle database. Okay, so now we should be able to see parallel. So there are 8 parallel servers on top consuming all the CPU, and if you see, the load will increase after some time, and also the idle percentage will be reduced. Okay, so if idle percentage is reduced, that means that the CPU is utilized by something. So now obviously if you have set any monitoring tools, then once the load crosses for certain threshold, you will get an alert saying that very high load on the server. So what you will do, you will just check the top command and you will just check what exactly consumed. Obviously parallel means CPU, so CPU means parallel. So whenever any parallel process runs, obviously CPU will be completely occupied. This is one of the hint that we can use. Okay, so once you monitor the processes, you can also identify the process ID and also the user. So if the user is Oracle, obviously the next thing that we do is log into the database. So once we log into the database, we can execute certain queries. Okay, so we have a lot of different queries. We have $px process. Okay, so I'm just giving you the views for your reference. Okay, so you can just create your own query. So we have a lot of columns like this: status, PID, SPID, SID, serial number. So you can identify the parallel process information using this view. Okay, so you have all the information here. Okay, what is the parallel process server name, and what is the status of those parallel processes? Currently it says it is available. Okay, so that's why we don't see any SID in any of the columns. Okay, so sometimes even application owners or the management, right? So they don't understand how Oracle allocates the parallel servers. So they may ask saying that why not you can use parallel to speed up the performance of the query. So that's when we need to understand that allocating parallel is expensive, okay, always. So if the data that you are going to fetch, if the table size is only 1 GB, okay, so as per Oracle, if the table size is less than 1 GB, then using parallel will be useless, okay. But I would say it depends on your analysis, okay. It's not that if it is greater than 1 GB you have to use parallel. So it depends on the situation. So when the database is completely idle, then you can use parallel, that's not a problem. But when the database is already occupied, right, already if the CPU is 90% utilized, again after that you are executing any parallel query, then it would completely hang the system. So during that time you need to do something else to manage, right? So it depends on the situation. So yeah, always less than 1 GB will not be will not be the case where you use parallel, okay. So if it is more than 1 GB, then you can use parallel, but with a reduced parallel, like 2 parallel servers, something like that, okay. And we have a lot of parameters. So show parameter parallel. So you can tweak all the parallel related parameters using these available values, okay. So the major parameters will be parallel degree limit and parallel degree policy, and if it is a rack system it will be parallel force local, and for rack system we can also use parallel instance group, and parallel min servers, parallel max servers. So these parameters are quite important. So you will not be always playing around with all the parameters here, okay. So parallel degree policy will be manual if automatic parallel is not required. So automatic parallel means Oracle has some internal algorithm to control the parallel. So automatically Oracle will spawn the parallel depending on the table size and depending on the query criticality, or not the criticality, but the amount of rows that needs to be fetched for a particular time, and it also checks the idleness of the database, and a lot of things are there. But always setting a parallel degree policy to manual will be it may or may not be good, okay, because if you are giving full control to the application team, then what they will say, they will just tell that use parallel for all the queries, but that will not be good for every time, okay. So that's why when you set the parameter to manual, and when the database is under good control, right, when it is under experienced DBA control, then obviously setting manual will be efficient. Otherwise you can set it to auto, okay. And parallel degree limit will be always CPU, because you cannot cross the CPU limit, right. So obviously when you set it to CPU, Oracle will throttle all the parallel less than the CPU limit. So if there are 8 CPUs, then it will just try to limit or cap less than 8, something like 7, okay. So that's why it should be CPU. And parallel min servers and max servers, these parameters are very important, okay. So these parameters determine the number of parallel servers that should be allocated from the operating system level, okay. This is the max parameter, okay, maximum number of servers that can be allocated by the Oracle database, okay. So if I use parallel more than this, if I use 70 or 72, then Oracle will not allocate, because the maximum limit is 64. And this also depends on the CPU, okay, parallel threads per CPU. So here it is 2, and you can also check the CPU count, it is 3, okay. So since I am using this Oracle database in a virtual machine, so this will be completely different, okay. So it depends on the vendor and how the CPU cores are allocated, Okay, so some CPU advanced CPU models may have some hyper threading and all this other stuffs. Okay, so that may completely convert the parallel into different threads. Okay, so we have to check the hardware underlying on the database. Okay, so here if you see the physical limit, you just need to multiply these two values, so it will be 6. So 6 is the maximum limit that you can use, but since this is a virtual machine, the allocation will be completely complex. Okay, and yeah, so you can use a set of queries like this. Okay, so I have just used lot of filters here, so you can just remove the filters, so you can just design your own query. You don't need to exactly use query like this. So yeah, so we have another view called $px sesstat. Okay, so this will completely give the session related information which are consuming the parallel. So $px process gives the process related information like the PID, the SPID, operating system information will be recorded under $px process. Okay, and yeah, we have other views called $pqstat. So these are similar queries. Okay, so this will give us the idle and the active state of the sessions which are using parallel. Okay, and yeah, all these are similar queries which give some additional information about the parallel process. So px stat gives the cumulative value of the parallel. Okay, cumulative and also the individual parallel buffers and chunk informations. Okay, so how many servers are in use? So let me just check how many are available, how many servers are started. So all these high level informations will be there. So the chunk related informations, the high water information of the parallel. So these are completely related to the parallel chunks. Okay, which is allocated in the memory, and also parallel uses large pool. Okay, so sometimes parallel may completely use large pool for allocating the parallel, and also it uses when direct path operations like sorting, hashing, so all these kind of operations uses parallel in PGA. Okay, so we have pq sesstat. This is completely parallel query. Okay, query is parallelized. So currently everything is 0 because these queries are not completely consuming the parallel. Okay, so each and every executions are quite fast, so that's why the parallel servers are not captured in all these views. Okay, but if you see the top command, you will be able to see all the parallel processes on the top, and if you identify the individual PID, right, you will be able to identify the process. So 3452. So let me just identify one of the process. Three, 4, 5, 2 is the SPID. Okay, so we also can see this under PX process. Okay, so let me just say select star from to get the more information about the process. Okay, so now we got the exact parallel process which is in use. Okay, so previously if you see, it was in use, but after when I refreshed the query, it is saying available. So now it is in use, now it is in available. After some time it will be in use. Okay, so these queries are just small queries, okay, comparatively to the Oracle database workload, okay, because the Oracle database is completely idle. So only this specific query is executed throughout the database time. So that's why the parallel process which are in use are not completely captured in the views. It is just captured like a point 50 seconds or within 0.5 seconds it is getting captured, and again it will become available. So it is just a short burst of parallel usage. Okay, so generally Oracle would not recommend to use parallel for these kind of queries, these kind of short bursts of parallel queries, right? So here I am just executing the shell script in a loop for like 1,000 times or more than that. Okay, so this kind of queries will completely drain the resource temporarily, and it will be consistent, and also it may cause intermittent performance issues. So hope you understand this, right? So parallel should be used whenever there is a large volume of data that needs to be scanned, and it's kind of only one time use. Okay, so it should not be used in any loops, and also it should not be used in a loop for a short task, okay, or small task. So if I just write a code with 1,000 loops, okay, and it is just scanning only 100 rows, say for example, just a simple example. So for scanning these 100 rows 1,000 times, if I use parallel queries, 8 parallel servers I am using, then just imagine how many loops will be there. 1,000 into 100 rows, so almost these many number of rows will be returned, but for each execution 100 rows will be scanned. So this is quite expensive, and Oracle has to allocate lot of resource, and it is an overhead for Oracle. So we should not be using parallel for these kind of short bursts of activity. Okay, so these are the parallel parameters that I already mentioned. Okay, and yeah, so this is the diagnostic folder. So if you want to see what each and every parallel process are doing, you can also go and monitor the parallel traces. Okay, so parallel traces contain some information about the parallel. So if you want more details about the information, so you can use the tracing I mean inside the tracing location you can use the trace files. Okay, so you can also generate a simple test case, okay, to monitor the parallel. Okay, so whenever we are enabling the parallel query, we need to execute this DDL, okay, alter session enable parallel query, alter session force parallel query parallel 8. So this is not for the DBAs, but this is for the application application users who are executing the queries. Otherwise parallel will not be used. Okay, so you may get a lot of complaints as a DBA from the application team saying that I need to use parallel, but Oracle is not using the parallel. Okay, so it is your job to understand and identify what mistake the application owner did, or whether Oracle, a lot of reasons are there, right? So application users would not have used the proper settings. Settings means these commands. So Oracle will not use parallel if you are not using these commands before executing the queries. So it may be application users knowledge gap, or it may be Oracle's resource issue. Actually Oracle does not have the resource and it is not using the parallel, or it may be due to the settings from the database end. So if you are having some limits, or if you have disabled parallel from the database end, right? So how you will identify whether parallel is enabled or disabled? So we had seen all the different parameters in the these parameters, right? So parallel max servers, if the value of parallel max servers is 0, right? So that means that Oracle will not be using parallel. This means that this means parallel is disabled in Oracle database. Okay, so this is one of the way that you can identify whether parallel is actually enabled or not. Okay, so yeah, so these are all the let me just completely scan all the so that's fine. Let me just take one of the trace files. Okay, lot of trace files are generated. Okay, so if you are using parallel in a loop, right? So here these are like around 1000 or 10,000 loops. I have just it is infinite loop that I have written. Okay, so for each and every loop, Oracle will generate trace file for each and every parallel server. So even the space may get full in the directory where all the trace files are stored, right? So that also we should be cautious. So when lot of parallel traces are generated, your the mount point where you are storing all the parallel traces will get full. Okay, so here if you see, max number of sessions exceeded. Okay, so Oracle itself cannot allocate this many number of parallel slaves, because I have just written some infinite loop of select queries with parallel. Okay, so here if you see, I have just used while loop. So while loop will without any terminator. So this loop will not terminate unless until I manually interrupt and cancel it. Okay, so yeah, so whenever parallel servers are used, we should make sure that the trace file locations are also having sufficient space, or you need to immediately kill all those sessions which are using parallel. And also you need to focus on parallel, not parallel, the processes parameter. Okay, so here if you see, max processes that can be used are 5000. Okay, so if you see the resource limit currently, the max processes would have been reached already. So that's why we are getting Ora 020 error. Okay, so here if you see, the limit value is 500. Okay, but yeah, max utilization is 281. So currently it is under control, but when I executed the shell script, right, infinite loop shell script, it would have been maxed out. Okay, but it should have shown on the recent value, but not sure. It's not completely showing the max process. It is only 281. That's fine. Also, why I mentioned this, because you also need to make sure that these processes parameter are sufficient to handle all those parallel processes. Okay, yeah, so you can identify the queries which are using the parallel using the simple select statement. Okay, so let me just show you that. So this is the query to identify the SQL ID. Okay. So here if you see, we got the SQL ID which is using the parallel. So you may need to identify whether it is a background SQL or whether it is any stats job or if it is any application job. So here if you see the SQL which is using parallel, it is some background internal job. Okay, it is some scheduler program. Here if you see, scheduler CDB program. So it is using parallel. Okay, and what you can do, you can also identify the execution plan of the query using this command. So just paste the SQL ID. So if you see, this is an internal SQL statement, that is why the execution plan list is quite big. Okay, you have 176 steps, and here if you see, we have parallel PX coordinator. This is the query coordinator that I mentioned. This is kind of the manager in the bank, right? So this coordinator will be managing and spawning the multiple slave processes like PX slaves. Okay, so here each and every parallel will be having a queue. Okay, so you will be the queue name will be mentioned in the plan. Okay, so also Bloom filters will be used for whenever parallel is used. Okay, so here if you see, there are a lot of different queues. Okay, so every slaves will be completing its work, and it will be giving end of the day it will be giving the work to the parallel query coordinator. Okay, so this is how we can see the execution plans. And we also have another important view, okay, which is not in this slide. So yeah, we also have $px TQ stat. This is one of the view. It's not PX TQ stat, it is PQ TQ stat. So sometimes it may be confusing, right? So there are a lot of views, and which view that you have to use, right? So I would say using $px process, that would be sufficient. Okay, you don't need to use all the views. Okay, just see open $px process. Okay, just use the important columns like SID, SPID, serial number, PID, status, and server name. Okay, the main thing that you need to see is whether the status of the parallel server is available or in use. So if it is available, then parallel is not used. If it is in use, then something is using that parallel. So this is how we can monitor whether the parallel is actually used or not. Okay, so let me just again show you. So if all the parallel processes are available and you don't see any SID here, then this means that parallel is not used. Okay, so I just cancel this shell script. So that's why you don't see anything here. So if someone is complaining saying that Oracle is not using parallel, then first you need to say, first you need to monitor this view and check if status is available or it is actually using. So if it is in use, then this means that you can directly say that parallel is used. So if it is not in use, then you can further troubleshoot and see why parallel is not used. So now if you see, once I execute the shell script, immediately I got the output as in use. Okay, so this is how we can monitor the parallel. And also another way is you can also monitor it from the VDLS session parameter. Okay, so select SQL ID from VDLS session where type is not is equal to background. So in VDLS session you will be getting multiple outputs like this. This means that parallel is used. Okay, so if you identify the SQL text for this SQL ID, then you will understand what the SQL is. Okay, so this is completely different SQL. This is not the parallel SQL. Okay, so you can also identify the parallel servers using another column from VDLS session, which is module. Not module, it is program. Okay, so under program you can just see P001. So this is under program, all the background process information will be there under inside this parenthesis. So I already mentioned that if the process name starts with P0, this is a parallel server. So P001 means this is a parallel server. So this is also another hint of identifying the parallel. So now what you can do is you can filter like this. Once you identify some pattern, right, where program like, you can specify this. Okay, so this is one of the way. So you can just check the SQL text for this SQL as well. Okay, so this is the actual parallel statement that I execute from the shell script. Okay, so just check the count of star $v session where SQL ID is equal to this. Okay, so then this is a short span of query, so it will execute in milliseconds. So that's why if you just again and again monitor the query, so here we got 9 count. Okay, so why we are getting 9 sessions even though we are we used 8 parallel? Okay, so this may be another question that you might have. So one session will be spawned as the query coordinator, the main parallel process. Okay, so remaining 8 other sessions will be parallel slaves. Okay, so this is one of the internals that you need to understand. 8 plus 1 will be 9. So this one process will be the main coordinator process, and remaining will be slaves. So the 8 slaves that you are the 8 number that you are specifying the hint in the query are parallel slaves, not the actual coordinator. So if you are specifying 16 here, then you will see 17 in the count of star plus 1, 16 plus 1, 17. So this coordinator will coordinate all the different slaves. Okay, so these are all just the basics about the parallel. Okay, so there are a lot more than this about the parallel servers. Okay, so hope this is a lengthy video, and hope this video is quite useful for you. Okay, so if you just like this video, just hit a like, and also if you need more useful sessions like this for your day-to-day real-time DBA activities and monitoring, just comment and subscribe. Thanks for watching.